It's Thursday!
Woo! Nice! Fantastic! Oh, we're already got a phone ringing!
Ah, this is typical.
Right
of us.
on, 6 o'clock. Fantastic. What's Thursday?
Thursday.
You know what that means.
Very much so.
Tasting time.
Yes.
Today we are doing
the
some
Facebook page. Sure, I was just about to
Whiskies of the world.
Whiskies of the
there's
world.
a Facebook
We
event.
sure are.
So which one are we starting with, Luke?
We are starting with the Suntory
Oh,
Toki.
it's just started.
Aha.
So if you go to the Wigs page,
This is
now,
an
you'll
entry-level
see it.
whiskey from
Suntory.
Suntory. It's made for highballs.
Very popular in Japan actually. Good old highball.
Well, the Japanese tradition is you have a highball before you taste
Okay.
other
So let me
whiskies.
just
So, fresh in
post
the
it in
palate.
the event.
And
If you
this
just go
whiskey
to the
being made
Facebook, to the
especially
Wigs
made
Facebook
to do
page,
that.
not necessarily the event. It'll
We have
be
Liz
there as
online.
well.
Hello, Liz.
Hey Liz. This is
Oh,
a
that's
blended whiskey, I will say. It's good to
You got it? Right.
point out. And contrary to popular belief,
Right, no worries.
blended whiskey is not
Thanks.
necessarily inferior
Okay.
to single malt or single grain.
Yeah, because often people, they always look for a single malt.
Particularly a lot of the Japanese stuff, because when they go to blend a whiskey, they use a few different grains, and because of that, they can pick whatever flavour profiles they want for, particularly say a highball. So, from what I understand, this does use a certain percentage of corn. There's a little bit of corn in there, which is generally reserved for things like your American style whiskies.
Yeah, okay.
But they don't use the same sour mash that the bourbons and American whiskies use. But it does, from what I understand, incorporate a little bit of corn, which can give you that really bright aroma on the nose. If you sort of smell it, it gives you that fresh vegetal.
Now, for everyone at home, we have just poured the Suntory Toki.
Indeed.
Indeed. Beautiful.
Beautiful.
And a relatively new whiskey from Suntory.
Indeed. Beautiful pale straw colour.
Now, whiskey in Japan hasn't been around all that long, has it? Maybe the late 1800s?
Oh, yeah.
Sometime
Thereabouts.
around then.
Yeah.
It's quite interesting. A lot of people's understanding of whiskey is that it comes from Scotland and that everywhere else is kind of quite new. But if you look back, there's, number one, most countries have been distilling spirit for hundreds of years. And whether or not they call it whiskey is neither here nor there, because it often comes from grains.
Yeah.
It's often barrel aged, you know, things like that. And the other thing is, a lot of the countries that ended up picking up whiskey from, you know, the UK and Scotland and Ireland and so forth, did so pretty early on. But they seem to be newer in those countries because that's when they really took a boom in terms of popularity.
Certainly, yeah.
So,
Yeah, okay.
and the reason we've chosen this particular whiskey, it's a great starting whiskey for different international whiskies of the world, but also because Suntory particularly are the people who really put Japanese whiskey on the map in sort of the more contemporary world. So,
And they are the makers of Yamazaki.
Hibiki and Hakushu, all of that sort of stuff.
So they're but they're most famous for the Yamazaki stuff.
Yeah.
We've got David that's got in and Diane. We've got Stephen. We are starting with the Suntory Toki, the Japanese whiskey.
Now, it's a lovely colour.
Beautiful pale straw colour.
I really like the nose.
It's bright and fresh without being too herbal. Like it's
No,
got a nice
yes.
vegetal note to it. A little bit of vanilla-iness. It smells refreshing. Normally you get that on the palate, but not always on the nose. But
What is the ABV on this one, actually?
43%.
43.
Oh, okay.
So pretty good for an entry level.
Indeed.
There's almost a light fruitiness on the nose.
You have a waxiness as well.
Yeah. I want to say peaches, but that sounds a bit silly.
Peaches.
Yeah, like
Yeah, it's something more almost a
Like pear?
pear's good, yeah. Almost reminds me of
some sort of floral thing, like
Yeah.
almost gardenia or
Yeah. Ron has said nice smell, and we've got Gary. Hi, Gary. We did a tasting with Gary the other day. Liz has said I love the nose, and we've got
Yeah.
Trudy as well.
Really interesting nose on it. What else? There's something. There's pear's a good bet.
Well, because you were saying something waxy. Could that be like green apple, but maybe not green apple?
Almost a honeysuckle sort of a smell.
Yeah, that's it, Luke. You know,
It's that
Ooh.
green, honey, green leafy sort of smell.
yeah.
Almost
Quite
orange blossomy.
summery?
Do you know like that? Not orange, obviously, but orange blossom.
I think a bit like potassium flowers.
That's a bit too specific even for me. Which,
You can
if you
almost
follow
say
along at
that's
home quite regularly, that's quite rare that there's something too specific for my outrageous tasting notes. But can't say I know what potassium tastes like.
No, it smells like.
Or smells like.
Have a nibble on it.
Not a potassium sniffer.
Colette has said a light fruity vanilla. A little
Yeah.
bit of Wigs, yeah. It's
Yeah,
got quite a
this-
sweetness to it.
Yeah, I
I think
suspect
it's
that comes from the corn.
And the oak, I think.
Mm.
Ooh, Kylie has said melon and jasmine.
Jasmine's a really good bet.
Yeah.
Honeydew melon even. Like a really nice.
Honeydew melon.
Yeah.
For sure.
Oh yeah. Okay, I'm gonna
Yeah.
time to sit.
You into it?
Ooh, yum.
Ooh.
That sort of like herbaceousness starts off and then you hit the honey vanilla notes at the back. And by honey it's like really quite honey.
Oh,
That's
almost
really
toffee.
honey.
Yeah.
Almost toffee.
Yeah, I wouldn't quite go toffee. I don't think it's dark enough for toffee.
Caramel.
Diane has
Mm.
said warm honey and vanilla. Actually, that was
Yeah.
wrong. Sorry. Yeah.
Yeah.
That's delicious.
Wow.
It goes to show a blended whiskey can bring you a little bit more. There's a little bit more spectrum of what you can do with it as well. There's the different grains, you get different
We have
flavors
it.
you can play with.
Yeah, a couple of drops of water.
Yep.
Routine.
The whole routine.
1, 2, 3, 4. There you go.
I think Vivian has said I am here, but she's accidentally said it from the Wigs seller account.
I'd like to say I told you
Can
so.
we bring her in?
Well, no, because she's on the Wigs account. So
Oh, okay.
As some people from home have realised, if you see funny messages that say, I'm here just from our account, it's usually because we have a staff member at home tasting along.
Yeah.
So the water helps, which is like nice. A little bit warmer on the nose with a bit of water. It's a really interesting whiskey.
Ooh. That brings
Let's
out
see if we can.
more spiciness to the water.
Mmm. That's really interesting. And I've got to say, as much as I love my like heavily aged or strong flavourful whiskies, I don't mind a lighter aromatic style. Do you know what I mean? Things like you get from your Japanese whiskies, some of your non-bourbon American whiskies, even sort of like the Italian stuff.
I like the fact that it's really nice and clean and really well made.
I think rather than focusing on filling it with flavour in terms of like your traditional heavily aged sort of stuff, they've more gone for that high quality spirit. Really beautiful texture actually. It's really smooth all the way across the palate.
True. Lisa says sweet but not quite toffee, and Coletta said nougat.
Ah, yeah.
That's a good.
Oh, that's a good get. Yeah.
Nougat's good.
I like nougat.
I'm liking this more and more. This is dangerously good.
See, I'm not sure. I think I liked it without the water in it, actually.
Gets a bit spicy with the water.
It does. Certainly.
Mm.
Where?
I understand it though, because it's a perfectly good sort of whiskey cocktail, sort of highball.
Where do you want to be drinking this? I always feel like it's a summer whiskey.
This is a summer whiskey for sure.
Yeah.
And it'd go with all sorts of things. I think it would go with, even oysters.
Yeah, yeah. No, I've done a bit of a highball whiskey. Whiskey highballs can go with a lot of different things. 'Cause
What's in a whiskey highball?
it's just whiskey with soda and a good solid slice of lemon.
Yeah. Yeah. No. Yeah.
So
Yeah.
by the time you're putting a fair amount of soda and a big slice of lemon in there, it could go with just about
Summer.
anything.
Yeah.
I would say that would be really good on a spring make a good, nice big honey old fashioned.
Yeah.
Spoonful of honey, dash of orange bitters.
Yum.
Call it a day.
Ash, hello. We are starting with the Suntory Toki. Coming to that. And hello, Adam as well. He preferred it without water as well.
Yeah, interesting.
Yeah, I think we're all on that one.
Yeah. I definitely think. I've never thought of a whiskey summary, but I think this is a summer whiskey.
It's definitely a style that's become a lot more. I wouldn't say popular. I think traditional Scotch whiskey is still the
Well, I
biggest
guess
market.
because
But
they're cold and they want you to sit by the fire and keep warm, whereas Japan.
Japanese whiskies, there's some good Australian whiskies that do similar things.
So this should go with the Japanese cherry blossom, you think?
No.
No, he's sitting under a Japanese.
Oh, underneath, yeah.
It's spring.
No,
What
I'm
do you
thinking,
mean?
I'm thinking about like the smell of cherry blossom, and I was like,
No.
I don't know that would pair well.
Like a garnish.
Yeah.
Oh, you weren't pairing it.
No. Sitting underneath a blossom. Yes.
Yeah, it's like sitting in the garden, kind of the spring whiskey. You know,
I enjoy that. Wow.
it reminds me quite heavily of the Puni Italian whiskey.
Well, yeah, you were just saying it's sort of similar to those Italian styles. Beautiful. Fantastic. Well, do we have any last comments on Japanese whiskey?
Well, there's a lot of it, and it's all very good. Or not all.
And it's not
most
all,
of it's
but
very
it's
good.
not all the same.
No, it's not the same.
People lump them all together, you know.
Can you find, I guess, more peated Japanese whiskey?
So
There's not a lot of them, but there
No.
are some.
there's one. Suntory makes one out of their coffee still, but they don't release it every year.
Oh, I had a
Um,
customer asking about
yep.
that the other day.
And there's a couple other people that take ex-Islay casks
And then
and
barrel.
barrel aged, because obviously they don't necessarily have their own peat bog. Some of them smoke it themselves using different woods and whatever, and then some of them barrel age it in a cask that's previously housed an Islay whiskey.
Peated whiskey. Okay. Yeah.
They, tend to give different styles as well.
But generally, I find that the way I usually describe it to people is if you're trying to think about the Japanese whiskey, it kind of sits between the lighter Scotch whiskies and Irish whiskey. So
It's definitely
In
sort of
between.
halfway between your Irish grain whiskies and say like your Speyside whiskies
yeah,
with that more aromatic fruit flavours.
and they're very refined, so they're good.
Yeah.
And hence that's why they're so popular, because it's so well made.
Yes, indeed.
Mm.
No.
Alright, we're about to move on.
What are we moving on to?
We're about to move on to the Egans vintage grain.
Yum.
Indeed.
So this is an Irish whiskey.
You betcha.
What's the go?
Well,
With the Y.
Would be helpful to take the lid off before it.
whiskey's always been terribly popular in Ireland, but it did have a period where it sort of died off. So, back towards between 1890 and 1990, that 100 years it kind of died. And it
Well, some say it was killed off by the English stuff, don't they?
I was going to say, if you look at that particular time period when the Irish whiskey died out, it was pretty well timed by the English suddenly deciding that they preferred to drink some of the Scottish-made stuff.
And we're shutting Ireland down.
And shutting Ireland down, basically. So that was it got to a point where I think it was 1990, they were down to 3 distilleries in Ireland. So,
Ooh.
since then, in the last 10 years, pretty much gone the opposite way again.
Yeah.
So, if you do see Irish whiskies that are over, 15 years old, it usually was originally distilled and barreled in one of those 3 distilleries,
yeah, okay.
or a previously closed down distillery.
Okay.
So there's quite a complex history about some of the whiskies that go through that sort of like 100-year period.
Yes.
But, of late, a lot of them are reopened and been repurposed and reimagined and everything.
And this is why it's called the vintage grain. So this whiskey is a homage to previous distillery that was on site that was closed down. And in doing so, they took an old recipe and sort of reimagined their oldest,
Right, okay.
the oldest recipe of whiskey that they could find.
Yes.
Speaking of the oldest whiskey,
Yes.
what is so important about the Irish in this three is that we're not drinking any Scotch today.
Indeed.
And Scotch is obviously the most well-known, heavily drunk, first thing you think of when you drink whiskey.
Yeah.
But if you haven't drunk a lot of Irish whiskey before, you might not know it actually predates the Scottish stuff. So, 14th century is Scotland started really getting into whiskey, but these guys go back all the way to
Before
11th
that.
or 12th. It basically started when a lot of the Irish monks did some trips around the Mediterranean in the 10th and 11th century, and they came back and they used what they learned to make perfumes and distillates, and that's what started
Okay.
whiskey as we know it. Other grain spirits did exist, and the word whiskey comes from the old Gaelic. And if you didn't know, Gaelic was also originated in Ireland before it got moved to Scotland as well. So a lot of the Scottish history of whiskey is quite Irish, which I find quite entertaining. But yeah, really interesting word, which was ueske, which is spelled with lots of vowels and yada yada yada. But yeah, ended up being whiskey, but it meant water of life.
There you go.
So there.
Whiskey
Cheers to
lessons.
you. Cheers to you too.
Beautiful.
Creamy.
Now this one is slightly darker, I think.
Just slightly.
Ever
Not a
so
lot. It's got less of a yellow tone and more of a it's a little bit cooler, you know, it's a little bit,
Yeah.
I wouldn't say brown, but yeah, that sort of pale straw kind of. Ooh,
Lisa said straight off the bat, much more smoke.
really punchy nose.
Wow.
Dry grass and light smokiness. Really beautiful, sort of dried herbal aromatics. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
That grassiness I find delicious.
Ross is having a good sniff and a good think.
Yeah, I'm just. I don't have a drop of water.
This one's a bit tricky. What's everyone else at home getting?
There's something there that I can't quite put my finger on.
My palate keeps saying, I want some of the Toki.
But, you know,
I've got to get over that.
indeed.
What's the ABV on this one actually? It's higher.
These ones, 46%.
Okay.
And if you know anything about the Irish, a lot of their whiskies tend to be a little bit stronger than some of the Scottish counterparts. And a slightly sharper style. It's not to everyone's taste. It has that slight, not spiciness, but quite a sharp
Like
grainess.
not a kick, but
Particularly a lot of the Irish don't, they specialise more in a grain style whiskey than a malted whiskey.
yes.
So it doesn't always, can be a little bit sharper in terms of the fact that it's generally got less sugar conversion
Yeah.
from a lack of germination of the seed.
Again, it's sort of almost a herbiness.
Vivian has said caramel,
Yep.
and Adam is saying toffee. Yeah.
It's almost burnt sugar, like that.
Well, yeah.
Burnt sugar sort of smell. I wouldn't say
Not quite toffee.
Quite
Overcooked toffee.
Overcooked toffee.
whew, burnt,
Yeah,
burnt
that's
sugar.
not burnt.
But exactly.
There's something else going. Sorry, got you with this.
Josh has also Irish whiskey is usually triple distilled, isn't it?
Correct. And they usually use a pot still rather than a column still.
You've gone into tasting. Oh,
It's pear again, but it's not quite the same.
no, it's a different pear.
It's almost like Corella pears, those little sort of green and red pears.
I'm getting some licorice.
Yeah, there's a bit of
Aniseed.
aniseed. I wouldn't say licorice.
I reckon licorice, personally.
Star anise, maybe? Oh. The more air it's getting, the more that's sort of opening up, coming out of it.
Oh, actually it says toasted marshmallows, like burnt caramel.
Oh yeah, good axe. I like it.
Oh, and Josh has it. And traditionally using unmalted barley as well as some malted because the tax was high on malted barley.
Correct.
Yeah.
Correct.
This has got a really beautiful and interesting texture.
Yes.
Yeah, it's oily and almost sticky at the front palate, and then really crisp and clean on the end.
Oh.
But persistent though. It's not,
Mm.
I wouldn't call it length, but really persistent. Like
No, I
it's-
call that length.
you
And
call
there
it-
is vanilla on the back palate, which comes through, which is quite interesting.
You can definitely get the smokiness on the palate, I feel like. You can get it as much on the nose.
There's a bit of cloviness almost.
What it is.
It's an incredibly complex whiskey.
Definitely.
It's almost like a, it's that, almost like cooked orange, caramelized orange.
Well, I guess like with the oiliness.
Yeah.
Yeah, okay.
What I refer to as the crêpe Suzette, which is like butter, brandy, orange, frying pan, bit of pancake batter.
Oh yeah.
Interesting. Maybe I should add. Have you added water?
No. No.
See, I thought you were when you were smelling it.
No.
It's actually got some brandy sort of notes to it, which is interesting.
Brandy. Okay.
Yeah.
I got 3 drops.
You got 3 drops.
I got 3 drops. So I did 4 last time. It was 1 too many.
Oh, how horrible.
I don't know how many I put.
I don't count.
We shall see.
I've got better things to do than count drops of water. Ooh, changes the nose.
Yeah.
Figure out.
I think it does go 4 drops.
I mean, it's a 46% triple distilled. The nougat comes out on the nose.
Yeah.
There's like a really beautiful like fresh pastry sort of smell.
Okay.
I've been thinking that. I think it's like vanilla and kind of like butter.
Yeah.
So it's basically a cupcake.
Vanilla is something we use it quite a lot
It's
to
like a
describe
cupcake.
whiskey, but there's a butteriness on this.
Yeah, interesting.
I like that with the water.
Oh, the water is
Yeah. Just opened up all the flavours.
that makes it absolutely like mouth watering.
Yeah, Vivian has just said broad mouth fill with the water. Definitely agree.
Mm.
How interesting.
Is this really specific chrysanthemum?
Chrysanthemum.
I think
Sorry,
that
what was that?
Chrysanthemum.
that light floral
Just
honey
make sure.
sort of note is like almost like wildflower honey or chrysanthemum. I'm loving this more and more.
Liz has said, yes, cupcake.
She gets me.
She got it.
She's got it. Woohoo!
Interesting. Now, where do we want to be drinking this one?
Mmm.
As opposed to a spring, I think this is more of an autumn. Do you know? Because it's got that sharpness, that little bit of grassiness.
I think this might go with your crepe Suzette. Luke.
I can imagine to be like a sun.
You know what? If you sleep in to about midday and you want to, you know, a nice,
breakfast whiskey
Yeah.
at an appropriate time.
at an appropriate time. You know, 12, 1 o'clock, and you
Crepe
want
Suzette with a bit of
A crepe
brandy,
Suzette.
orange brandy sauce and
a big scoop of vanilla ice cream and that with a big rock of ice in it. I'd be Sunday afternoon. I'd be happy as Larry.
Okay.
Good old Larry.
Happy as Larry.
I dare say this would make some really good whiskey cocktails though.
Yeah.
Very complex flavour.
Colette agrees much better with water, and Asher said cupcake batter.
Mm.
Yeah.
Interesting.
This is risky, and people have said nougat, and that kind of implies like that almost, not like egg pastries, like Portuguese tarts, or as you say, like
But we keep going down this path. It's starting to sound more and more like we think this is a dessert whiskey. Will these go well with Portuguese egg tarts? I think it would.
Oh, yeah.
actually.
I think this is more of a brunch whiskey.
A brunch whiskey.
So when I'm saying like
Oh.
baked goods, I don't necessarily mean like desserts. I mean like, you know, like a little orange and poppy seed, like Friand or
So
something.
so you need to be to a French patisserie because.
Yeah, it's like French patisserie brunch sort of deal. Is everything okay?
Yeah.
Cool.
Yeah, whiskey. Well,
This is
Diane said,
yum.
not being a whiskey drinker, this would have to be to date one. What? Oh yeah, it'd have to be one of the ones she'd be able to drink. Lizzie said porridge. I imagine drinking this at like sunset.
Yeah, that's not bad.
Yeah, that kind of vibe.
A sunset whiskey.
You may also notice while we are in front of the whiskey wall today, we have opened it up slightly around the corner so that we can include our beautiful selection of Irish and American whiskies.
Indeed.
We haven't got all our Australian and Japanese stuff right there, but we thought we'd open it up a little bit.
Yeah.
So yeah.
Fantastic. Now, do we have any last comments on Irish whiskey at all?
Well, there's a huge array of them now. There's sort of new distilleries opening up all the time in Ireland, so there's all sorts of stuff going on.
And the Irish aren't going anywhere in terms of whiskey making. They're not closing down their distilleries again, that's for sure.
No.
And they're doing some quite interesting things. You've got things like Connemara, who are one of the people who make peated Irish whiskey, which is pretty rare.
Super malts.
Then you've got people who do that do some really interesting barrel aging, like your rum barrel aged, your bourbon barrel aged, your red wine barrel aged, things like your Hyde series, your Redbreast series. Really interesting stuff.
Yeah.
The Redbreast, strange enough, got last year won the trophy at the London International for the best whiskey and show.
And Hyde, I think, won some awards back at San Fran a couple of years ago as well. So the Irish whiskies aren't slowing down.
No.
Yeah. Indeed.
To add to that is you're sort of finding that now the Scottish are doing a lot more interesting things with the types of barrels they use for some of the fix the grain because they've fallen a bit behind what everyone else is doing. Irish, Japanese, and Australian. So lift their game.
Well, there's something quite interesting to be said, I think, for particularly the Scottish whiskies that have been for such a long time rooted in tradition. So don't necessarily have the same rate of growth as places like Japan and Australia who have had to make their own whiskey culture pretty quickly, which I think is quite interesting. We are having a couple of technical difficulties, so please bear with us.
Fantastic. Well, let's move on to Starward.
Indeed, we are trying the Starward twofold.
We shot a glass.
No, I've got one. I used it for water by accident.
Now, these guys are in Port Melbourne, so not far away from us.
Well, they started off in those an aircraft hangar in Essendon Airport. Moved.
Back in the day.
How long ago did they move to Port Melbourne? 2 or 3 years ago?
More than 3. But this is a very interesting whiskey. They use a combination of 2 different grains and barrel techniques. One of which is, of course, their red wine barrel that they that they are quite well known for. Their red wine barrel aged whiskey. But yeah, very interesting. The other thing is,
They're very big on their barrels too, by the way. They actually employ a guy from the Barossa Valley to choose barrels for them.
yeah,
Not just Australia, from all over the world. So he's a barrel expert, and that's all he does. He chooses the right barrels to go with their whiskey.
indeed.
But he also works for a lot of the big wineries as well.
Yeah.
But
Who
he
would know
chooses-
the barrels quite well?
So he selects barrels to meet their needs specifically.
I do know for a fact that a large portion of their red wine barrels are a combination of Barossa and some other South Australian. There's a bit of Pinot, a bit of Shiraz.
Yes, that was my understanding from the Nova. Yeah. And I understand these guys are made of wheat and malted barley.
Yeah.
Classic Australian.
Yeah, I mean, a lot of Australian whiskies sort of followed in the footsteps of certain Scottish whiskies. So it was good to see a blended grain that used 2 different grains rather than just going straight to the single malt. I think it's quite interesting in it.
Well, they started with their single malt, so and that's what they were known for.
But that's why I think this is so interesting.
They were looking for a slightly lower price and a more
Yeah, they wanted to make
approachable
a more approachable whiskey.
both in price and in flavour profile.
But I mean,
It's been highly successful. Everyone seems to be loving it. So.
Yeah, they do. Now this one is a lot darker. This one's almost like an amber or
yeah, it's definitely got that pale gold colour.
You can see the barrel aging on it, really. Isn't it?
Well, it also implies that not only is it aged for a little bit longer, but something like your red wine cask gives off a little bit more colour.
Yeah.
certainly.
It's got a really beautiful nose.
Yeah, Vivian says much darker, richer in colour. Yeah, Liz has said
This is
much
where-
richer.
Sort of like caramels, raisins have come out now.
Oh yeah.
Sultanery sort of notes.
Or yeah, Vivian has also said a malted coffee smell. I get a bit of coffee.
Oh yeah.
Mm.
The maltiness on the nose of this is quite nice. This is really interesting.
Yum.
It's not quite as aromatic as I think. I feel like
These are a lot more light and herbaceous,
yes,
and this is a little bit more warm spice.
so
Hence why we kind of left it to last.
yes, which is
Sort of red toffee apples.
red toffee apples. Yeah, almost
Something
thinking
to
like
mix with.
cooked apples, like baked apples.
Baked
Like
apples.
stewed fruit.
I get the sultana.
There's almost a bit of I hate to push the envelope, but
Hate to push the envelope.
almost like tropical sort of pineapple-y. I don't know, maybe that's just me.
Oh
Are
yeah.
you thinking like the like fried pineapple, or are you thinking like super fresh pineapple?
I think it's caramelised pineapple.
Really, really fresh pineapple that's been fried. It's not like overripe that can be that.
And it's not overcooked.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, yeah. Like a nice.
It's
char-
not tinned pineapple that's been cooked. It's fresh pineapple.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. This is a conversation we were having the other day about certain wines, me and Ava. Because we're talking about how sort of pineapple came up, and I think a lot of people's understanding of pineapple is sort of like bottled pineapple juice, canned pineapple. But a really fresh pineapple can be almost green, quite sharp, acidic.
Yes, definitely.
Yeah, but if you get the tinned pineapple taste in a white wine,
Run away.
yeah, it's been picked overripe and it's overdone. I wouldn't. You know, some people do like that style, but really, it really means they've left the grapes in the vine too long.
Yeah.
But fresh pineapple, that can be a good sign of
Yeah,
a good rainfall, good herbaceousness,
Yeah. So
good acidity level.
now
Wow. Now,
This is really taking a while to open up.
time to dive in.
dive.
Oh, the star anise is coming through a little bit, which is subtle. But there's cloves in here.
Maybe even a little bit of cinnamon, but not.
Yeah, a little bit of cinnamon. I'd even go a bit of black cardamom,
Okay.
like that black woody sort of.
Yeah. Okay.
Oh, it's a nice deep palate.
Ooh, I like that.
You like the palate? It's just gone.
It's a lot woodier.
It's woody. It's really smooth. The texture on that is just still going.
There's a flavour in there that I just don't know what it is.
See, what's interesting, we talked about pears that sort of came through on these whiskies, but this reminds me of like stewed pears. Like pears stewed with cinnamon, clove, star anise,
Yeah.
that sort of thing. Do you know what I mean?
Now Kylie said Starward recommends trying this with tonic, like we tried Starward with tonic last time, and it was delicious. So I might get us a tonic as well.
While Eva gets us a tonic, I will say this is number one, a dangerous whiskey.
Drop
Number
of
two,
water.
I don't think it needs the
I
tonic.
reckon you should try it with tonic, Ross.
Oh, I have 3 drops of water again, just to see. I can then add tonic afterwards.
That's so smooth.
Seems a shame to add tonic to it.
I could go a splash of tonic.
You'd be surprised.
Okay.
You can be surprised.
We've got light tonic.
Surprising.
How do you feel about the water? Does that change the texture?
Not really.
I think it's such a rich, smooth whiskey. I don't know that water's going to open it up more than it already is.
flavour?
Coffee, chocolate.
Maybe it's more coffee-ish. It might be coffee.
Oh yeah.
With the tonic?
I literally put, if you look at my glass, I put a couple of drops of tonic in there. Being a slightly richer whiskey, a little bit of bubble in there lifts out some of the flavour on the palate. It like brightens it up a little bit. Brings sort of floral notes to it.
Oh, that's pretty yum.
Mm. Yeah, pretty yum.
Pretty yum.
Pretty yum.
That almost brings it to, there's some elderflower notes in there. There's some more, almost reminds me a little bit of, like there's vanilla and herb flavours you get from something like yellow chartreuse. Even some of your floral honey,
I get more of the coffee in there.
Yeah.
the grassy honey vodkas like your Sobieski,
Oh, yeah.
like that.
Maybe that's why I really like it, because I like that. Maybe.
Ah, talk about Sobieski. Vivian, this is for Luke. Vivian made an espresso martini using Sobieski honey and Mr. Black coffee.
Ah,
Because you know the Mr. Black coffee can be a bit dry. The
Yeah.
Sobieski honey just perfect.
brightens it up. I use butter vodka for my espresso martini. But
There you go.
that's just me.
This is really yum.
This is very good.
Mm.
I'm just gonna straight up go
Yum,
there.
yum.
Yum.
It goes to show, blended whiskey, Australian whiskey, cheaper style whiskey, doesn't mean it's bad.
No.
It's bloody good.
I remember in our last tasting, we were all like unanimously said Starward was the winner. Last time we didn't discuss it beforehand. It was a bit sneaky, but
I don't know that I'm going to be able to pick a winner today. I think these are all completely different.
they're all very different.
But I like them all equally.
I really like the Toki because it's made made as a highball whiskey specifically, and I think it's just perfect for that role.
It's
the first whiskey of the night, just gets you sort of like
it's
set the scene and get you up and
Set the
think
scene.
about it. Yeah.
I'd be quite interested to taste the Starward and the Toki back to back.
Well, you put the egg in. Okay, we just.
Mostly because this is so rich and interesting, and this is like a completely different grassy floral sort of lighter whiskey.
Actually, well, there you go. There's.
Where do you want to be drinking the Starward?
That's almost like a dinner whiskey.
A dinner whiskey, yeah.
I would drink that with dinner, to be honest. Even with the tonic, a little bit of tonic in there. A nice, like, buttery pasta would be good.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, I reckon that could even take a bit of seafood. Mussels, particularly.
Really?
Yeah.
I think it's too sweet and coffee to go with food or seafood.
Like a smoky.
I think of
Mussels.
autumn sunset.
Autumn sunset.
Autumn
Oh,
sunset.
sunset.
I'm thinking like a paella.
Now Adam has said vanilla. Yeah, and he's saying, which one would you recommend using in a whiskey sour?
Oh, a whiskey sour.
Yeah, look, I've got both of them.
I don't want to touch your glass. Look, I think highball here. I think that the spicy grassiness of something like your Egans would hold up in a whiskey sour pretty well.
Yeah, okay.
And I might even with something like your Egans do a bit of a combination of lemon and lime rather than just
You
straight
wouldn't
lemon.
go to Toki and whiskey sour.
I mean, you would, but I would
if you
stick
had
to
a choice.
I would stick to like this. I would do honey old fashioned highballs. Focus on the light floralness of the whiskey. I think if you're going to put citrus in there, something a little bit
Okay, yeah.
stronger, sharper, bolder, like your Egans would be really good.
Not this one?
I mean, the twofold you could do either with, but your twofold is big and thick enough that it can hold up to sort of like your darker style whiskey cocktails. Like that would be really good in something like our Bobby Burns that we've been playing with a lot,
That would be yum.
which brings or even I did a Bobby Burns the other day and I swapped out the Dom Benedictine herbal for Cointreau. Nice orange and sweet vermouth.
Oh, that would go with that.
Yeah, it was delicious.
Wow.
So yeah,
Yeah.
Speaking of cocktails, we have spent a lot of this afternoon been bottling up some cocktails for a private tasting, which is quite fun.
Yes, indeed. Lots of fun. John has said I would drink that for dinner too,
Yeah, quite happily.
Yeah.
instead of dinner. I certainly agree. Yeah, we don't know. Do we have any last comments on whiskies of the world? I'm so surprised at how different they are. Well, not so surprised, but
I'm not necessarily surprised, but I haven't really drunk a lot of these whiskies before, and I'm really pleased to see the range of flavour is there and the quality is there. Like you got 3 completely different flavours of whiskey and 3 and like great quality and different texture as well, which is interesting.
And it's not Scotch.
And
Well,
I
it's
enjoy
not
that.
Scotch, yeah.
And it's a different style of whiskey, particularly these
New
two.
World whiskey,
New World whiskey.
definitely.
Well, we call it New World. We had a bit of a problem naming this week's tasting because we said international whiskey because we thought, no, it's not Scotch. And then we thought, we can't call it that if we put an Australian in. And then we were saying,
we could have called it not Scotch.
yeah,
Not
but
Scotch, but that.
what's the point in talking about titling something with the one thing it's not about?
Hopscotch.
Oh,
Yeah, well.
hey.
And then obviously someone said New World whiskey, and I thought, well, that doesn't really work.
No, but it
Something like your Irish whiskey that,
But it's new. It's all what's old is new again.
yeah,
It's a new take on it.
it is. It's quite interesting.
But instead, whiskies of the world.
Whiskies of the world. And I'd be interested to see if we can maybe do some other international whiskies. at
Yes.
some point.
Well, if we're going to do that,
We need to
we're
do
going to have to do Italian whiskey.
an American.
But you're in the same tasting? Or...
No, not the same tasting.
Oh.
No.
We've got plans. Anyway, what are we doing next week, Eva?
Next week, we're doing Tasmanian Pinot. Woo!
Eva's pretty excited as our resident Tasmanian.
Yay!
She's
Well,
feeling quite at home with
there's
this
lots of good
success.
discussions to have about Tasmanian Pinots, which we've been having off and on.
We have, but we have to save it to next week.
Oh.
Indeed. So you can see the ones in front of me here. We're doing the Devil's Corner from the East Coast of Frozen Peninsula. We're doing the Derwent Estate Pinot from the Tamar Valley, and then the Derwent River or Derwent Valley, and then we've got the Ninth Island from the Tamar Valley up the north. Beautiful. So yeah, the same goes all on Drinksmiths. You can get the half set or full set. Yeah.
And what are we doing after that?
After that, I have not got the bottles with me, but that's fine. We're doing. It's gin time again, so we're doing
Hooray!
pink gin.
I'm very excited.
Yay!
We haven't got the bottles. I said another pink gin we haven't got that I really want to.
You really want it.
I really
Well,
want
we
to.
can't. We can't.
Now, as a pre-warning to pink gin, we are not just doing fruit and floral gins. We are doing a dry pink gin as well.
Yeah. So we've got a dry, a floral, and a fruit.
And fruit. So
We're gonna do them all.
don't freak out. We're going to cover all our bases.
Indeed.
And I'm very excited.
Yeah. And so we'll post that tomorrow, and you'll see that.
Pink gin. Woo-hoo. Oh,
Beautiful.
so that means I won't be able to get that.
No.
Russ, you're late to go.
Yeah. So everyone, let us know if you need a drink, if you need a chat, all of that. We're here. We're open.
Twiddling our
phones.
thumbs.
Not just twiddling our thumbs. We're
Phone's there.
phones there. But yeah, let us know if you need a drink. You can order stuff on Drinksmiths.
Indeed.
And
And
yeah.
if you wanted to book a private tasting, we're still doing private tastings. We've got a whole range of red wines, white wines, rosés. We're also
Gins,
open to
whiskies.
spirits.
Yeah.
And even if you can get a solid group of over 15 to 20 people, we're happy to bottle up some cocktails for you. So
Indeed.
let us know.
Yeah. Fantastic.
Cheers.
Well, have
Look
a long
after
week,
yourselves,
guys. I'll
stay
see you
inside,
next week.
and see you next week.
Cheers.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye.